Okay, so Ryan, honestly, I don't think you can exegete the Bible very well at all. So I don't look to absorb much from you at this point anymore. But if you want to talk about Isaiah 66, and well, since Jamie, you don't take everything literally, like you don't think we're going to keep the feasts and stuff from Old Testament prophecy, how do you keep a consistent hermeneutic? I don't read those verses literally, except for where they should be taken literally. Kind of like when we read Revelation, when you take the symbolic parts and insist they are literal, even though it gives you literal interpretation. Second death, the lake of fire, is the second death, which is an interpretation, but you insist that the book of Revelation supersedes all the literal narrative regarding the nature of hell and the death of the wicked. Okay, so it's kind of like that. Some of it's to be taken literally, some of it maybe not. Why is that? Well, I've given a hermeneutic for how Adventists understand that. Here's one example. The Sabbath was introduced to mankind before there was sin in the world. Since the new heavens and the new earth are a restored heaven and earth, the weekly Sabbath as a memorial of creation would still be literal. And if you look at what I've presented in the past regarding this passage, when God proclaims something that'll happen in the new heavens and the new earth from one new moon to another, well, that was just an indication of when the months begin. So many translators have given a literal translation of from month to month and from Sabbath to Sabbath, all flesh will come to worship before me. What of that is not to be taken literally? You tell me. Are we not going to literally, in the new heavens and new earth, going to come to worship God from month to month and from Sabbath to Sabbath? Is that your position? We're not going to do that. It's not literal. What isn't literal about that? I was plugging in what people say, Jesus is your Sabbath. Okay, so from one Jesus to another. Well, that makes sense because your Jesus accepts gay people. Their Jesus doesn't. Your Jesus says Sunday is the day we worship God. My Jesus says it's every original Sabbath. Are we going to come to worship God weekly? And what day do you suppose it'll be? I thought you kept Sabbath. So what's your point? If someone honestly exegetes Isaiah 66, 15 to 24 verses that you are referencing, basically every verse in Isaiah 66, 15 to 24 is using symbolic language. The correct hermeneutic is to not take the surface level items literally. I've always taken my time telling you this. The Sabbath word was nowhere near a passage where symbolism. I never said that. And dude, you don't have exegesis, bro. See if you have anything of substance to say. All metaphors, symbolism, or it's saying you have to understand the metaphor is, not what the literal word is. Fire and sword, yeah, that means what? It means judgment and destruction. You do well to take your own advice in interpreting Revelation. Of course, you think the judgment, don't you think the judgment happened in 70 AD at Jerusalem? How unliterally do you want to take this? Oh, you don't think God's going to literally restore the heavens and the earth. Tell me, when can we take the Bible literally, Ryan? I mean, you don't even believe in a physical resurrection. I don't have much time for that. You don't think there'll be a new heavens and a new earth with a literal moon. So again, I would read the entire Isaiah 2, sort of symbolic language, or Isaiah's communicating God's promises. Yeah, that's my position. Ancient Israelites can understand. Okay. Their intended context in order to argue your Sabbath premise. I wasn't arguing my Sabbath premise. You don't trick people who are aware of the true context of the verse. Some less savvy people. Unlike you, you're savvy, I guess. Dude, I don't think you're understanding the context of my comments very well, but I'm not even sure what your position is at this point. Are you saying the Sabbath is an allegory now? Because you used to say you keep the Sabbath. Tell me, do you think God really rested on the seventh day? Is that allegory too? is this, I mean, we all operate on a literal 7-day week, and it goes back historically. Where do you think that came from? Did God literally create in 7 days? Did the Sabbath, was it literally a reflection of what God did in creation? When did it get done away with? Is my question. If the Sabbath was holy from the beginning, the Israelites kept it. Jesus didn't do away with the law. The early church establishes the new covenant. The things which the law define are still the things which the law defines. Breaking the commandments is sin. People throughout Christian history have remained resting on the Sabbath. God talks about there being a Sabbath in the new heavens and the new earth. Why would I take it in some other way when there's never a point where God didn't say the Sabbath is holy? His people kept it under harsh penalty. The new covenant didn't do away with it. Jesus kept the Sabbath. People throughout Christian history kept the Sabbath. People are still keeping the Sabbath. Someone tried to change the Sabbath, but he just tried to. He didn't do it. People follow that and pretend like they have different excuses for why they don't honor the Sabbath, which Jesus is Lord of. But someone's always honored the Sabbath. It's always existed from the beginning of creation. It's described throughout the Old Covenant, God's people keeping it. God's people kept it during Jesus' day. Jesus doesn't do away with it. Jesus condemned sin in the flesh. Sin is breaking God's laws. The early church kept the Sabbath. People throughout Christian history have kept the Sabbath. People will and do keep the Sabbath up until Jesus returns. And God describes there being a Sabbath in the new heavens and the new earth, which is an eternal estate. So when should I start thinking the Sabbath is an allegory? You tell me. Where in God's history of planet Earth should I take the Sabbath as a allegory or something done away with that is clearly commanded to God's people and was never done away with and is shown historically, biblically, and prophetically to exist from the very beginning through until the eternal ages? When should I start taking it as an allegory? You tell me. When did it become an allegory? I'll be waiting.